Welcome to the Dissecting the Wisdom of Shaltazar episodes. My name is Jeffrey Eisen. I'm a spiritual life coach, the channeler of Shaltazar, and an energy intuitive. In these episodes, my collaborator and friend Mark Lane and I will be picking a particular message in each episode that we will be reviewing, having a conversation about, and dissecting the wisdom from. The messages from Shaltazar are very high-level master teachings, and it is key to peel them away, dissect them, comment on them, and discuss them in order to get the greatest value. We hope you'll be intrigued, we're confident you'll learn, and we know you will benefit. And welcome back to another edition of Dissecting the Wisdom of Shaltazar. Welcome back, Mark.
Hi, Jeffrey. How are you today?
Excellent. I am great. We've just gone through a period of the solstice and a new moon and eclipse, and so the energy's all shaken up, and I am looking forward to our conversation today, as I do every week with you. Why don't you tell the listeners which message we're going to be talking about?
The message I chose for this week was changing the paradigm.
Changing the paradigm. And what drew you to that one?
I think that change has become at the forefront of everyone's lives so much lately. I was working on a written piece, and I had listened to this and read it some time ago. And for some reason, while I was writing, it was tapping me on the shoulder. So I was like, there must be something there that I'm supposed to think about. So I pulled it back out and I looked at it again. And I think that what I was writing was connected to this idea of control and how we as humans feel predisposed to control each other, and how we are in many ways controlled by a lot of what I seem to think are, I guess, things that I think are maybe outdated constructs in society that are informing what we do and coloring our values. And it just seemed like that whole idea of being controlled was sort of the forefront of this message.
Excellent. Yeah, I want to talk about control, but before I do, it's interesting because when you choose a message, I go in and check it out, and there are now going to be somewhere around 95 or 96 of these messages, and often, and of course I can't remember them all, so often the title is representative of what it is, and I find myself judging what it is by the title, and then I get back into it, re-listen to it, reread it, and say, oh yeah, okay, I remember that one. It wasn't quite what I thought it was. And, I don't spend a lot of time coming up with titles. I channel first and then sort of say, well, what should I call it? And I am by no means an expert in marketing, because I do not sort of find the keywords. I just sort of say, well, what am I going to call this one? And so although it's called Changing the Paradigm, there, when I re-listened to it and reread it, there was so much more to it. And so I just encourage listeners, don't necessarily get put off by the title. Do it the way Mark does, and just allow your intuition to draw you to one of the messages. You may find that, the mind's assessment of the title is a little bit off, and you might have been getting an intuitive nudge for the body of the message. So I just wanted to point that out. I love what you're talking about control, because as you're talking about control, of course, we think of man's desire to control other men, but and women, of course. But there's also, the desire for us to be in control ourselves. And so this message is I think, on a multi-level basis. I know I'm struggling with that, me trying to be in control, because as I've tapped more into my intuition, tapped into Shaltazar, and they keep telling me to surrender, I'm always trying to stay in control. It's something that was, natural for me, obviously conditioned in my belief. And so it's no wonder that people want to control other people, because I believe that we have learned to try and control ourselves. So have you found that in yourself? Do you find yourself trying to be in control?
Well, I think it's almost like a conditioned response to life in many ways. I mean, we're sort of all taught that, you gotta be proactive, right? You've got to make a difference, take action. And as a result, I mean, I think action is an important component of, manifestation in any situation. But I think the idea of inspired action is different than action wrought or brought forth by control, right? When we're trying to make life happen on our own terms instead of the universe's terms, we're exerting or attempting at least to exert our control over situations and circumstances. When we follow spirit, or we allow the universe to sort of lead us to a choice and then take action on that choice, it's a whole different experience.
Yeah. And what comes to mind for me is, as I grapple with that whole control thing, in order for me to make the decision that I'm going to give up that control, I find that the only thing that helps is trust and faith. Because if I believe it's just me, if I believe that I'm the one fully responsible for what's going to happen in my life, then I'm going to want to be in control. But if I can trust the higher power, if I can trust my intuition, if I can trust that which I do not know, and Sheltazar has mentioned that on numerous occasions, that we will never fully know the invisible world. So they're asking us to trust that which we do not fully comprehend or understand. It is when I trust that I can give up control. And one trite example is my schedule. I'm always scheduling things, and sometimes people are canceling, and sometimes my calendar is completely full, right back to back, and other times it's got lots of spaces. And I find myself trying to be in control. Oh my goodness, I need more space in there, or oh, I'm going to be bored, I don't have enough to do. And when I give up control and trust, things really work out. I've had numerous occasions where, my Calendly scheduling kind of screwed up a little bit, and I had back-to-back sessions, and I said, okay, well, I'll just surrender. And sure enough, one of the sessions canceled out and I had some space. So for me, when it comes to my scheduling, I have given up control to the universe, and it's working out really well for me. I just have this great trust that if there's a space in my calendar, it's because I'm going to need some personal space. I'm going to not be in the mood or the energy for to be able to coach with people. So, I don't know how you feel about it, but in order to give up control, you have to feel comfortable to give it up to something else. And I think a lot of people give up their control to the governments, institutions, religions, their family. And that hasn't worked out that well for me. But I find when I give up my control to the universe, things work out much better.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that the faith component of it is probably what holds most people back from, making that choice to trust the universe versus trusting, some sort of man-made institution. People they seem predisposed to, if something's not right in their world, to, we'll call the police, we'll blame the government, call upon our elected officials. There has to be a component of faith, I think, to truly, authentically, release control. And you're right. It seems like as soon as you're able to make that choice, everything sort of falls into place and everything kind of aligns itself. It's remarkable. And it doesn't seem like, it's almost like you don't trust. It takes some practice to trust that experience and to trust that it's going to work that way. But then once it does a few times, you're like, okay, this does work. I can let go and I can trust, and I'll get my answers, or I'll get what I'm looking for.
And I think part of the frustration that I'm noticing in the world right now is that trust or faith has got to be put into governments, and, with regard to COVID-19, people that are supposed to be educated in pandemics. And I think the frustration is that we're finding that they may be making decisions that are somewhat opposed to what we believe. So I think this is an ideal time for us to look at that whole control issue and realize that it's an opportunity to shift a little bit. In one paragraph, it says, "For you see, when those who are controlled, who are oppressed, get to the point of extreme frustration from being controlled, they tend to rise up and often fight back. But they choose to do so in the only way that they know, the way they were taught, to rise up, to revolt against those that oppress them, and to control them back. If you look at human history, you will realize that for too long, all human beings do is try to control each other." And then a few paragraphs later, they're saying, if we're going to get by that, if we're going to create a new world order, a new humanity, we require, and they say, a shift shift in perspective, a shift in thinking. It requires a move from the energy of control, competition, and keeping people down to the energy of cooperation, collaboration, and of empowering people. It requires a major philosophical shift in believing in the goodness of humankind. It requires taking off the shackles of those who are different. It requires that you teach others to connect with their power. And we know your first thought is that once others are empowered, they will want to control you. That is an old paradigm, old energy. And it's interesting, as I'm reading that, they're talking about those that are different. And it's no coincidence that this whole pandemic thing at the same time is bringing up the race relationship issue that we've talked about. And so you can see that, I do anyway, that the universe has really kind of planned what's happening right now as this opportunity to relook at our philosophy, our beliefs, and our values.
Yeah, that's a good point. Oh, and you probably won't be surprised to know that I highlighted those two sections also.
Of course, I wouldn't be surprised. I would be surprised if we didn't, which is kind of interesting. I want to come back because for whatever reason, I'm being tugged back to this trust and faith. And yes, we can have trust and faith in the higher power, but we do live in a world of human beings. We do live in different countries, different cultures, different religions, different governments. And so I don't think it's appropriate to advise people to just ignore that and just trust this invisible power. We need to decide who we're going to trust. And that's why I truly believe that the political systems need to change, because whether they're dictatorships, whether they're democracies, I see that the trust is being eroded in governments. Trust is being eroded in the bureaucracy. In order for us to not try to control, in order for us not to try to get our way, we need to trust. And I think that we have an epidemic of lack of trust in the world.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost like the universe has decided to let governments make a mockery of themselves in many ways. And it seems to be that, and again, obviously we can't see into the future, but, this message talks about the shift paragraph after the paragraph you just read. It said that the shift we are talking about, if it occurs, will take several generations to happen. As some are empowered, they may become more fearful, and their fear will heighten, and they will use their power in old ways of controlling others or fighting back. It seems like we might be in that period right now where this pandemic is kind of erased international boundaries in a lot of ways. It used to be when something global happened, it was polarizing, right? There were two sides. There was the good guys and the bad guys. The
east and the west, or the north and the south, right?
Right, exactly. And this is, it's united everyone in a way against one common irritant. And so it seems to me that there's a feeling or an energy that's coming out of this whole thing of community. People seem to be a little bit more tolerant of each other, seem to be a little less inclined to control each other. And so maybe where this is all heading, and I'm not, you may be more familiar with the structures of some of these ancient civilizations we've talked about, like Lemuria and Atlantis, but they almost, my impression is that they were self-governing, that they didn't really need a centralized government, that was controlling the people and giving them rules and regulations and precepts to follow. They were there more as a support mechanism, and the people more or less governed themselves. It was their attitudes and their perspectives and they lived more from the heart, less from the head. And when, an entire civilization is like that, well, what do you need governments for? I mean, maybe that's the direction we're going.
100%. I'm with you 100%. I mean, let's dream and imagine of utopia. I believe that this control thing, that as the world got bigger, people decided to control others, and then there was the fighting back. And the more you feel controlled, the more you want to control others. And Sheltazar makes that point very, very definitively in this, is that when you are being controlled, you fight back with control. And so we got to drop all of the war of control, of trying to control each other, and switch more to empowerment. I think that it really requires an attitude change. Balthazar has made it very, very clear that the world will not change until the individuals change. It's the old as within, so without. So the only way that we're going to change the need for rules, regulations, government control is if we look within. And how much are we trying to control ourselves, and how much are we judging ourselves, and all of that. So to me, this is just another vote for what we've talked about all along with regard to COVID. It's an opportunity to go within. It's an opportunity to do that inner work. And all of those people that are out there protesting, I think it's because no matter which side of the protest you're on, it's because they are feeling that divisiveness within themselves. They're feeling that sense of control. So I agree with you. If we are to move back to more of a utopian way, it's going to be because we're going to do the work on the inside, that we're going to stop being so competitive. We're going to stop being so controlling. And last week we talked about, things that we're missing because of COVID, and one of them was sports. And, that whole sports and athletic culture is very competitive. It's all about winning and losing. So it's really time, I think the United Nations should create some committees to sort of look at the world situation and where we want the world to be going. And I don't think we're taking enough of that big picture perspective. I just want to end by commenting on what you talked about, the whole world situation. I don't look at the news that often, but every once in a while, I'll open up an article and I'll see a picture, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that looks familiar. And then I find out it's in Korea or it's in some other part of the world. And it's like, whoa, yes, we are all going through this. This, to a certain degree, has united us not in a very positive way, but it's united us. We're all fighting this invisible enemy. Now, if we could, and there's collaboration and cooperation in terms of cures and vaccines, whether you're pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine, it doesn't really matter. But there is cooperation because we are fighting one invisible enemy. Why can't we keep that going after this is over?
Yeah, I hope we can. I mean, I think that's, there's been, and we've talked about this, but there's been talk about, returning, when things return to normal. Maybe we don't want things to return to normal. Maybe this is, an opportunity to, affect serious and long-lasting change, and to following along with the message, change the paradigm to a collaborative environment, instead of falling back into our old ways and our old habits that weren't really working.
Right. Near the end it says, "For you see, the only way your world will change from one of control to one of empowerment is when the hearts of the many open up, when the world realizes the need to feel more and think less. It is then that you will witness more compassion, more caring, more understanding, more love. For when that is the case, there will be no need to fear your fellow human beings. There will be no need to control others." So I don't know about you, but, I'm an optimist. And as I approach, closer to the end of my life, I really want to believe that we can change the world and make it a better place. And I got to say, I just keep saying it over and over again. The only way to do that is to begin to change yourself.
Right. I couldn't agree more.
Right. And that's our message for today. Any last words, Mark?
Nope, I'm out of words.
Now that is something for a writer who is the master of words. And sometimes maybe that's just best. We just say nothing.
Right.
And so thank you, listeners. Thank you, Mark, so much for this beautiful conversation, this banter, this example of cooperation and collaboration. We don't fight with each other. We complement each other. And hopefully that energy inspires our listeners to do the same. So light and love to you all. We look forward to you tuning in again next week. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Jeffrey.